Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rocky here with Father Bonham VI. And Father, in today's conversation, I kind of want to build off of what we were talking about in the last episode about how things that we grew up with, we can imprint upon those that we're now responsible for as adults. We can imprint it based upon the relationship we have with whoever we're with. We can do it as bosses, putting these insecurities of why are you people not as good as I am? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you working as hard as I did onto our employees? We can do that to our children. We can do it really to any other relationship that's around us. And if it's a situation where people are forced to be with us, well, then they get more of it than people who are just like, well, I'm never talking to that guy again and moving on. So, what I wanted to talk about in this relationship or in this episode was one of those relationships that we essentially are forced with staying with, and that being with the household. Whenever you have little kids around, my son was just in here. He's not going to go and be able to pay a mortgage anytime soon. So therefore, he's going to be stuck living in my house for a while. And when I look at this, the kind of goal of today's episode and what I'd like to discuss is how do we go about, or is this even a worth project trying to think about? But how do we go about essentially the perfect process of raising someone, of growing someone up, teaching someone how to grow, essentially of process of how to raise a child? And I get that there are a gajillion different opinions and books about that, but given the fact that the more and more I've talked to you and more that we focus upon how to build up relationships, I've never seen evidence that it's wrong. So I obviously, because of rules of science, cannot prove it's 100% right, but I can't prove it's wrong to any degree. So I wanted to start with the prism as the relationship guys. You keep loving yourself being called to talk about this relationship here and focusing on, like I said, the process of how to create the perfect child, if such thing could even really even exist.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the $1 million question, I suppose. And uh, I think there's some really foundational things uh, if I look around at the kinds of people I've gotten to know personally, and when I'm not an expert parent, or I don't have any experience parenting in the strict sense. I mean, and even little children and teenagers and everything else. I mean, I look at awe with awe at parents, and I just have tremendous respect. I just said that to somebody a day or two ago. I just really reverence what parents do, and no two children are the same, and so and families aren't the same, and parents aren't the same. So there's I always find insight around the fact that there's no parenting manual in sacred scripture, and so on the one hand, that means that God has imprinted some of this in our hearts. On the other hand, it means that there's a lot that's culturally affected, and he wouldn't write something for all time other than things that are fundamental, like love. Love is fundamental, and the very kind of love that we see in Christ, which is a love of affection, a love of attention, a love of presence and commitment, a love of that involves sacrifice and puts the other first. And so there are a number of qualities that we can draw from Scripture that would be universal, and then have a particular application with parents. Um, we see already, and the neuroscience bears out the impact that just time in the womb has, and children are affected by mothers that are in stressful situations. When there's conflict and trauma in the family, babies already bear the marks of that from the womb. And so one answer to your question is, well, be holy. So be parents that are saints, and in your holiness, which then is able to navigate some of these circumstances and remain like Our Lady, and maybe with deep trust and peace and other things from the time in the womb. And then something that's become very important to me, I've come to understand a bit, is the dynamic of what Conrad Bars calls affirming love. And it's not affirmation like we often use the word in English, but he really means it in a technical sense. He says, you're feeling firm, you're feeling worthwhile and confident depends on another human being who uh, is able to see, to reverence your unique goodness and worth without desiring to change or possess you, who is moved by your unique goodness and worth, uh, and and then who lets you experience that through psychomotor reactions, the look of the face, a gesture, a smile, an approval, a word that the way that he describes it, and I love this, is that I get to experience that I am a gift by the way that you treat me, by the way that you respond to me, by the way that you are moved by me. I experience myself as a gift. And I just had the chance in between our recordings to see you with your son. And the way that you responded to him was so beautiful because he came in the room and you acknowledged his presence, you were delighted in him, you smiled and responded to him, he was interested in the football, you gave him the football, you came, you held him, you shared the fact that you're talking with me, you brought him into your life and you made him feel like a gift. He was a gift to you. He wasn't an interruption, he wasn't a problem, he wasn't somebody to be dismissed, he wasn't a nothing. He felt that he had real value in your sight just by the way that you interacted with him. And that affirming love, so that provides a foundation. And then if I can broaden that from the particular, from the individual experience of affirming love, to have that in the context of a stable marriage where there's a mother and a father who express that kind of affirming love for each other, that delight in each other, that are moved by each other, that help each other experience themselves as a gift by that love that they have for each other, where there's real presence and attention and patience and communication, where there's stability and commitment. So these are the things that provide the stable ground on which each unique individual can actually grow up and thrive. And and when I've pushed back on you on in a couple of previous episodes that kind of
Hmm.
got us down this path to a certain degree, because you clearly received that kind of love when you were growing up. You have a confidence, you know who you are, you feel yourself as a gift. You're not sort of riddled with insecurities and questioning the value of your life and your being and whether you have anything to offer. And you have that kind of confidence, which is very beautiful, and it gives you the courage to take risks and to put yourself out there. Um, and so, the kind of thing that, and I don't know your parents at all, but just from my knowing you, I can get a sense of what their marriage is like and the way that they loved you and the way that they believed in you and built you up. And I'm sure there's, things there. We have a certain kind of interaction that I don't see you at every moment of the day. And I might have little insight here or there where some places that they weren't able to love you as well as you needed at different times. But anyway, I think those things are really the ground. And we were talking a little bit about how important our feelings are. And I love what you said about the amount of this space in our brain dedicated to reason as opposed to dedicated to feelings. And I learned some of this from Jonathan Haidt, his book, The Righteous Mind. He describes feelings as the elephant and reason as the rider when we're making moral decisions. Our feelings are huge. And what are our feelings? Our feelings are our connection with reality. It's responding. Feelings are spontaneous. They're very important because it's a spontaneous response to reality as we perceive reality. So sometimes our perception is a little bit off. I think that candy bar is like the best thing and it's going to meet all of my needs, And so I see it and I feel good about it and I'm attracted to it. My perceptions can be off and we grow in our perceptions, but our spontaneous responses to stimuli, to people, to relationships, to situations are vital. If we don't have that spontaneous response with the energy and the delight that we need to experience life, then we are living a stunted life. And so what I was just describing about affirming love is also doing that. It's helping children to trust their feelings, and parents by validating their feelings. I mean, so your child runs and he skins his knee and he's scared by that. He hasn't seen blood, it hurts, and he doesn't know what it means. The first thing to do is to validate that. Oh, look at you, you got a boo-boo. That really hurts, doesn't it? Yeah, you kind of scared yourself. You didn't think that you were going to fall there. And being sensitive to the feelings that are going on there is really important. And then we can expand perception, like, it's going to be okay. Let mommy see it, let daddy see it. Let's look at it, give that a kiss. Okay, you're going to be okay. And then you can kind of build that up. But there's a different approach, which is, what are you crying about? Stop your crying. You're fine. It doesn't matter. That doesn't hurt. Go get back in there. And now a child has a conflict because those feelings are very strong and very real. And they've just been totally invalidated by this person who is like my world, my parent, my father, my mother defines my world in so many ways. And I've just been told you can't trust your feelings and they don't matter. And now I don't know what to do with that because those feelings are going to come up again. And now I'm going to invalidate them in myself. And then I can't trust myself. Whereas that parent that was able to press into that and say, I understand what your feelings are, that you're scared, trusting the feelings of the child and pressing into that and saying, I understand you're scared and it hurts, and come and let me comfort you. Okay, now let's be strong. We can do this together. You're going to make it through. And but you're meeting and then helping to shape that experience. So things like that are so vital in helping children to grow in a way that's really integrated and whole and healthy, and to trust what's happening inside of them. And so I just had let me give just one more example. I just was with a family a couple days ago, and the the little girl was playing with her aunt's hair and pulled on it, and the aunt, who is very sensitive but like was startled, and then had a look of pain. And the little girl, who was very sensitive, saw that look of pain and then suddenly felt bad because she had caused her aunt pain. And the aunt picked up on all of this and said, like, oh, no, no, it's okay. You saw my hurt face, didn't you? And you feel bad about that. And it was so sweet. The little girl went and grabbed her bunny and crawled into the lap of her mother because she just felt shame and hurt because she had caused pain. And all of that was just lovingly received. The mother held her. No, it's okay. She's okay. She's all right. You're going to be all right. Oh, it's so sweet that you're sensitive to that. And so all of that's just affirmed. And that little girl is learning what's happening inside of her by those interactions. So so those kinds of things, and that's especially for little ones, but in an ongoing way as we grow older, learning to identify and trust what's happening in ourselves is so important for that healthy growth.
And if I'm gathering correctly from what you're teaching here, it starts with us having essentially control or at least knowledge of our own emotional processes
That's
and what's
huge.
going on there. And really, I guess that was a long way of saying, like, that's part of this process of helping children develop. We have to have our own emotional maturity, really, and be able to teach that to those around us. And looking at how you're going through there, it makes so much sense. We see those that are pushing off emotions and not feeling about it being the same ones, or not necessarily the same ones, but that's definitely a byproduct that most addicted people have. Regardless of what you're addicted to, it's, I can't deal with some emotion, so I'm going all into this numbing agent, whether it be opioids, drugs or alcohol. It don't really matter. That's the calling there. And the true underlying answer is, we just need to figure out how to get more in touch with our emotions. And God knows we've done a lot of episodes about that. So I certainly direct you to whichever specific one would apply to you here. And all of them are available and free, by the way. We don't charge for any of this. We're trying to do this as a gift to everyone. And to go into that process of saying simultaneously, there's so much impact here, that it's every interaction is therefore important because of the stakes involved. If you lose a baseball game in the middle of June, it's nowhere near as important as losing a baseball game in the World Series. But seeing the importance of what even the slightest, maybe even trivial interaction could be, and the long-term ramifications that are perceived in our mind, can make us feel like every day is the World Series, because we all have that ability to go back to one instance in our memory bank and saying, this is what it was. And I want to push against that general notion, because I feel like that has to be a misconception. Sure, there can be like one off traumatic moments, but I think in general, when we think of in the past of these defining moments, if you will, as our child, are really repetitive things that happen more often than once, but we just happen to congeal a couple of those memories into this one defining one. And I have no idea if that's scientifically correct or factual. It's just kind of the feeling I have. And it might be something that I'm trying to do to make myself feel easier as a parent, to make this more like a baseball game in June than a baseball game in the World Series. So, Father, is there any validity to that, or am I just trying to ease my day to day life?
um, well, it's there's certainly yes, basically yes. The answer is yes. You're absolutely right. I mean, we do get a lot of opportunities, and even when we have times, if our listeners are interested, there's a YouTube video. If you look up the still faced experiment, and it describes very nicely, just a couple of 6 7 minute long video of a mother with her, maybe 1 year old, and the kind of interactions and pointing and smiling and responding and this attunement. And then the mother goes, her face goes slack and she has no response. And you see the kind of freak out that happens in the little 1 year old as he tries and then ultimately can't get her attention and then just begins to weep, because it's this disconnection. But back to the uh, point that you just made about little disattunements, little disconnections, they can actually be formative for better connections. Sometimes we misconnect, we misunderstand, we're not there when we're needed, and those can be opportunities to develop even stronger connections. The reconciliation, the reconnection after disconnection can build even stronger wells of confidence and resiliency and things like that. Not that we want to do that intentionally, but we shouldn't be afraid of it. And as you point out, the really key thing is we have to do our own work, be in touch with our own stuff, so that the child I mentioned, the mother and that environment, the chaotic environment that the children create, triggering her. Fixing the children isn't the answer to that problem, but her getting in touch with what's going on in her, and then even her kind of losing it and yelling at them, and those kinds of things can lead to a deeper connection as she comes to figure it out and understands what's happening in her, and then is able to apologize and reconnect with them. And then they're able to see, well, there's a resilience here. Even when mom seems to disconnect and there's some rejection there, she reconnects and things can get better. And that can build a greater confidence in our capacity to endure things in life and to grow through them. It's a little like I mean, the children eating things off the floor, right? The first child, especially, every parent is horrified. By child 2 or 3, they're incapable of actually controlling that. And then they start to figure out, they're probably getting a lot of immunity to a lot of diseases from whatever the thing is that they're eating off the floor. If it doesn't kill them, it'll make them stronger.
That's right.
And there's a certain, way that happens interactively, relationally, emotionally. It's when things are repeated, and one of the hardest things is also neglect. And so that might be another just kind of high point to signal for our listeners. Neglect is really hard because you can't put your finger on an experience. And so it starts to communicate a message that you're not worth connecting to. You're not worth being attentive to. You're not worth my time and my attention. And so neglect has a way of riddling later on, it's hard to connect to experiences of neglect because it's kind of the background, it's kind of the matrix, it's kind of the fabric of how things were growing up, and we don't know anything different. So it's like, I guess that's how it's supposed to be. Is even though I feel this deep emotional need for connection, I never got it, and so it must be something wrong with me. Well, no, it wasn't something wrong with you. And then there isn't a particular experience to go back to that we can put our finger on. Attention is really important. But then, the opposite end of these things where we make absolutely sanitary environments, where we remove, we used to talk about helicopter parents that are hovering
Hmm.
constantly and constantly not giving their children a chance to grow and risk and experiment and fail and this kind of thing. Apparently, they're talking about snowplow parents now who remove all of the obstacles so that
Hmm.
everything is as easy as possible. So that's the opposite. I wouldn't want to communicate that message either, that as much as I'm talking about attention and love and validation, affirmation, that doesn't mean removing all the obstacles. And we also have to help our children steadily grow in freedom and to take risks and to fail, and then to be there to help them pick up the pieces and to help them through. But we don't want to be helicopter parents or snowplow parents either. So it's so many different things to hold on to at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So Father, we definitely thank you for doing today's episode. I appreciate you letting me know that you don't need to be perfect every game, and in fact, some ways it actually helps you to be better. Just as that team in the middle of June, you find out that maybe I shouldn't be throwing this pitch in this situation. So when it comes time for the end of the season, we're a little bit better when the thing comes around. So I thank you very much for being with me today, Father. I thank everyone out there for listening. Please continue to click like, share, and if you have not done so, please definitely leave the 5-star review or whatever star you think we deserve. But please leave the review nonetheless, because it does help Apple get us to the people, get us to more people, and that's really the goal. It's just to keep getting more. Share us to the specific people you want us to have. Leave the review for the general public to find us as well. So we thank you all for being with us, and we'll be with you again next week.